and just for my notes, you're with which
No,
company?
Home Depot.
Sure. This is a continuation. We don't get the paperwork.
Oh, this was ever used last week?
No, it was actually several weeks ago.
Oh, this is the one there.
Yeah.
And the photo you submitted, it looked like it was 6/6, but you're clarifying
The actual
that
cut
the
sheet.
submission
The
is
actual,
1.
it's correct, what we actually ordered. Questions?
All set.
Questions? Hazard? Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
Here.
Second? Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Questions? Roll.
Okay, next matter is ARB 1604, the name of Huff, 9 South Ferris Street, interior alterations.
Good evening, Douglas McClure for Randy Huff and Karen Donahue at 9 South Ferris. The project is essentially an interior renovation. The house has been abandoned for a while. Pipes have burst, it's in really bad shape, so we're fixing it up. But the windows are also in really rough shape, so we're going to replace the windows and do a new roof, because the roof needs replacement. We'd like to change this bay window in the front to French doors so they can access this deck or concrete something in the front from the living room. And there's an asphalt shingle existing up in the gable. It's apparent that underneath it is an old decorative wood shingle. We're going to remove the asphalt and try and bring back what was there. The other thing we're doing is all the windows that are there now, the majority of them are existing windows. They're all wood, double hung 1/1s, except in the living room, which has this sort of interesting pattern in the upper sash. So in the front, we're going to do wood windows with simulated divided lights, but the 1/1s are kind of blank up there, so we're proposing to do 2/2s, which is kind of in keeping with a lot of other houses on the street. And then around the sides and the back, we're going to go to a less expensive window for budget reasons, but that will be 1/1 and look like what's there now. The shingles are going to be pewter gray, as says on the drawings. The house will probably be painted over the asbestos shingles. Color hasn't been determined yet, but the trim around the windows will be wood. And we're going to match the profiles of the existing window trims, but most of that will have to be replaced.
Okay, in one of your drawings, I saw you're putting 2 condenser units outside.
Along the side, yeah.
Is there any thought being given to landscaping in front of them so they're not seen by the neighbors?
I'm sure we can do that. It's kind of tucked in there anyway, but we could definitely put some landscaping there. There's not a lot of space for condensers in this area, so that seemed the most obvious spot.
I just was trying to look it up on the Google Maps.
Yes. You don't have very pictures, actually, brought some photos.
Yeah, that might have been helpful. So,
The house has like a blue tarp on the roof.
Yeah.
Yeah, my
no,
assumption
no.
always in the village, people will walk right by, so.
I'm just curious, what are you doing on the concrete porch?
Right now, for budget reasons, nothing. We're going to repaint the existing railing and just clean it up. We talked about, treating the front or putting bluestone down on top, but it's really out of their budget right now. The interior work is so extensive that that's really gonna take a lot. The foundation is brick, and on the side, the foundation is buckling in. So we have to put in the basement, we have to put in piers and steel bracing, which is an added expense that's really pushing things up. So in the future, you know, if the client does want to think about addressing this concrete patio and the siding, but it's just out of our budget right now.
So just one side of the building is gonna have the 2/2?
Yeah, just the front.
And I know you said it, Doug. What's the siding?
The siding right now currently is that asbestos thin, you know, the thin asbestos
Yeah.
shingles.
And so what are you putting on?
We're leaving that.
Oh, you're leaving
We're
it
leaving
on.
that, we're just gonna paint.
Okay, just the way it's drawn is.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I
that's
don't,
it.
I don't know the specific.
Look, I think I would encourage you to go speak to your clients about having at least the windows that are adjacent to the front in the same 2/2.
Yeah. These?
There, and on the other side as well, because they are visible. It's not that I think it's that side that's visible.
That side is the top side.
This side is visible, the
Yeah.
other side is not so visible. Yeah.
Right, it's very close to that. And so, I mean, that's one of those things to make the investment now and to go through it. I strongly encourage that. And then you said that they're gonna come back and do work, or?
They've talked about it, they want to bring the house back
Yeah.
as much as they can, so, and they're going to be long-term residents, that we have the house, between the, ambulance and the
The other-
the other
side of the
They
ambulance.
just
Yeah.
they
They just
renovated
did
that
that.
house, and so, they're planning on, you know, paying some attention to the village.
It would be, there is a little bit of lawn, right, as it goes down to the street on Terrace? There's a driveway, is that all being ripped out, or?
I don't believe it.
Isn't there a driveway on that one, or it's sort of?
No, that's the house next door.
The other one that's.
Yeah.
Double house next
Yeah,
door.
that's the double house next door.
Double house.
There is a little bit of lawn, and I think there's like a Japanese maple or
Yeah, right.
something there.
To the right of the property?
But this concrete patio comes almost to the street. It's kind of small here, but you can see there's just a small amount of landscape here. Sorry, it's right here. Never touched it.
Because they did such a good job on the main street. Cleaning that up.
Yeah, well, that's the long-term goal for this. But as I said, the inside, if you walk in, it's a project.
Andrew?
I don't have any comments.
Heather?
Just a point, you know, you said before, you said it was an abandoned house. It just wasn't an abandoned house, it was just somebody who just couldn't maintain it and
No, I didn't mean it that way.
Just,
I didn't mean it that
you know.
way. It has been empty for a while. The pipes froze and burst.
Right,
I know
because
there's
of
a
the-
lot of problems there, but they'd like to bring it back. So.
Yeah, it was a good family that lived in that house.
Yeah.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the application? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Okay. Next is ARB 16-05, 72 Sycamore Lane, Michigan, mechanical improvements. As we're talking about it's not a photovoltaic, yes, system. Is there anybody here for that? No. Okay.
They're on the back of the house. I don't.
They are, in the back of the house has nothing but pine trees, so it's, I don't know if you want
Well, there's one of those, the subway, that one was missing.
One. Maybe there's like a ramp.
Yeah. So we'll move it over.
Those companies don't really care.
All right. And I understand that ARB 1606, Foley 129 Main Street has been continued. There's some extenuating circumstances that the building inspector wants to take care of before this comes back in front of us. It has to do with village issues, so we're going to, at the request of the building department, continue this. And that would conclude our program for this evening, folks. Thanks. We do have some things to, some other things to discuss, not the least of which are two sets of minutes, but I just want everybody to be aware that along with all the information that was left here today, there's a letter from the from Larry Schoffer, informing us that the application of Donardo Capital Corp. For subdivision and site plan development approval at 30 to 40 South Broadway, Irvington, New York, has been, it says, the Irvington Planning Board is hereby notifying you that at its February 3rd, 2016 meeting, the board adopted a resolution to declare its intent to be lead agency for the review under this SECRA of the application of Donardo Capital Corp. They need to inform us and I need to sign off that we understand that they are going to be the lead agency. So I have a document here that says the ARB agrees to the Irvington Planning Board serving as lead agency for review under the State Environmental Quality Review Act of Donardo Capital Corp's proposal to 27 attached one-family dwellings at 3040 South Broadway, dated February 8th. Rocco Rusulo, acting chair. So if anybody wants to read the supporting documents that came with that.
Is that the fee site?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. There are two sets of minutes that require approval. I believe everybody has seen these. The January 25th minutes were sent for approval today. The January 11th meeting, Deb, myself, Heather, Ken, and Andrew Kochin were in attendance. Does anybody have any further changes, issues, concerns?
Nope.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That's one. And now we have, that's the January 11th minutes. January 25th minutes. This was a little thinner. The following members were, who together constituted a quorum, was Deb, Heather, and Ken. And once again, these minutes were sent around today. Did anybody have any questions, concerns, additions, subtractions?
I have a chance.
Since you were here, why don't you just have
Okay.
It's not like we got anything else going on. Look at the site. You have no issues. Ken is going over that. Not that I want to review them today, but has everybody seen the letters from both the Historical Society and the village when it comes to what we're going to be looking at on at our next meeting, which happens to be, so everybody knows, is upstairs. There's a village board meeting because of the holiday. They moved their meeting to the following Monday, so we will be upstairs. But has everybody seen the two letters?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So
Rick, can I make a comment? I think it's important, if you haven't, for people to review the multifamily zone amendment.
Actually, did we forget something too? Is that yours?
Oh, no.
Actually, sorry. Since I've already interrupted, sorry.
Sorry.
We just came back to see if we could pick up the prints from the Huff case from 9 South Paris.
The extra
You know what I mean?
copies?
Yeah. Perfect. That's very helpful.
You'll be able to speak to the building department also in a couple days. I can call tomorrow and see how long it's going to take them to approve their paperwork.
These are all ours. This is great. Oh my gosh, it's very helpful. Perfect. I'm expecting to close. Great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Good luck.
All right, good luck.
Bye, thank you.
So the multifamily zone text amendment, which was all about allowing attached single-family homes, and what's very important is that there were some aspects in it that involve the ARB in a different way than previously. You would have no real involvement until the very end of the process. But there was a historical house, historical building reuse section added in to allow protection of a historical building, and the benefit would be that the applicant would get an additional 2% of coverage on their project from 18 to 20%, inclusive of the coverage of the building or buildings that would be being saved for historical for reuse.
This is approved by whom? By the village board of trustees?
It's got to be, it's a zoning text amendment. So it was approved maybe last month or something, but I think you were sent a copy of it. I asked Larry and Marianne to be sure you guys got copies. So there's two aspects to the ARB. One is that you have to declare or find that the house is in fact, the building is in fact historically relevant, and that's the first test, and that's actually what the applicant is coming before you about next meeting. They got forwarded by the planning board because the planning board really doesn't want to go forward with discussing the site plan until they know whether or not the ARB will declare the building at 40 South Broadway, the Stearns House, historical value. If you do declare it as historical, then he goes back, Donardo Capital goes back to the planning board. They go through the whole process with the revised numbers for coverage and so forth and so on. The second aspect of what the ARB does is to monitor or verify at the end of the process. They basically have to certify that any changes made to the historical building for its reuse does in fact not change the historical nature of the building. So in other words, it's got to be, there are constraints written in the code. It can't increase the footprint, it can't increase the height, and there's 3 or 4 very specific things it can't do. And so in other words, you basically can't really modify much about the volume, shape, or envelope of the building itself. You might be able to put an extra door in, for instance. But any of that would have to then come, effectively the final plans for that would come to the ARB for a sign-off to say, yes, we agree that this does not affect the historical nature of the building.
So in the,
And then at that point, the planning board could in fact, if they haven't already written it as, subject to the ARB's approval, they would be, then they could approve the site plan. I'm sorry, go ahead.
in the secret letter that Rick has now, it said that they were converting that to 2 affordable housing units. Is that the house they're converting, or
The house.
and all other buildings are being demolished? The ones up on the top.
Yes, all the buildings on the upper level are being demolished. The 2 sites, 30 and 40, I guess, are being combined into one. So there's a subdivision application that has to go forward, and that's, as far as I understand, to combine them into one property.
And
For
are they, a couple questions. Are they doing anything with the wall along the aqueduct?
What they're doing, as far as I
I
understand,
haven't looked through the package, I'm sure it's.
what they're doing so far in the preliminary plans is basically nothing. They're going to maintain the wall as it is,
They're going
effectively.
to widen the roadway a little bit, but I think the driveway.
No, he's saying along the,
On the
Well,
end.
there's,
Oh, no,
um,
on the other side.
The Donardo Corporation is going to actually fix up that stone wall as much as they can, and they're
The
going to.
stone wall, yeah,
The
on
stone wall,
Broadway.
and then they're also going to, the historic mile marker, they're going to in some way restore and protect.
well, that's on the Broadway wall, yeah, that's, one of the conditions is that that has to be maintained. I mean, the basic changes to the rear wall is gonna be the same, I mean, they're gonna patch it where they have to, because there's a building sitting on it right now.
Yep.
So their intent is basically just to restore it to its, as best as possible. The front wall along Broadway, restore as necessary, and then the current plan calls for the entry driveway to be slightly changed in terms of not how its outlet, but how it comes in.
Yeah.
So it comes in kind of more straight and up. But again, that's all preliminary plans, and from what I hear from the planning board, there'll be a lot of give and take about some of the aspects of the site plan.
Again, thank you. You've told us that we're not going to get the chance to look at this until it gets.
It's
Yeah.
so bizarre.
No, the only thing that's been approved is the zoning text change.
No, we know.
The subdivision and the site plan is totally in
It will come back to us once we decide on this building on the corner, then it will all come back to us when it's virtually approved by the planning board.
Right, but you're gonna have all the standard approvals in terms of material, you're gonna have the reviews in terms of materials and everything for all the buildings. It's not just that one building, it's just like any other development, you're gonna,
But we have no say on siting, which affects the physical form and.
currently you don't unless you take it upon yourselves to advise the planning board. It's not in the code per se. Most of the siting stuff is left all to the planning board.
For the zoning reasons, I understand that, but it's just, in the end, the form of the building, its footprint are part of the architectural,
Are we talking about the 40 South Broadway? No, we're talking about,
the townhouses.
yeah.
It just seems strange that it comes back to us, and that puts a lot of pressure on us when we're.
Which part of it? I
The
mean,
townhouse portion of it.
well, when it comes back to,
We're gonna be approving the, just what you said, the windows, the form.
well, that's standard for what you
Right.
do, yeah.
But doing it at the end instead of while you're working through the process seems a little bit strange.
But that's,
Because that's the opposite of the way that we work as professionals. We're working on site and aesthetics.
okay.
Yeah, welcome to the ARB.
So I would suggest if there's,
It's an opportunity to have a discussion about that.
Well,
I do too.
I think it's worth bringing it up to the full board as in a work session, coming and just chatting about what it is about the process. This has been, it's hard to know where to make the break, where to make the,
Or jointly.
right.
It's really not markets the way every other town does it except Irvington.
I don't know that, so,
I mean, I go in front of boards, every other week. And if I go to 100, 99 of them are done where the architectural review board process is done in conjunction with any other process not coming to after. It's essentially rubber stamping. For people to come in here and then we say, you know what, I think the whole front massing of the building is off. They then have to go back to the planning board to redo all of their calculations.
yeah.
If we're merely just approving shingle color, window configuration, and roofing, that's not an architectural review board. That's a color palette board.
Actually,
There's
it's not
no-
really even that, Andrew, it's not even really that. Actually, if you look on
Yeah.
the, it's not even that.
No, we understand, but that's what we're
Well, I
saying.
think though that it's worthwhile bringing it up, but it's also, so what I would say is that the ARB should request a discussion of this.
Right.
Yes.
And it would probably be worthwhile, if it's gonna be at a work session, probably worthwhile to have more than just some ARB representatives there.
There should be some planning board representatives there too. I would imagine they would also like that if there are comments, it's lightening the load of their docket should things have to come back and forth once there's a comment made here. Because the one example I think of this board making a comment about the fenestration in the building, somebody appealed it, it went to the planning board, they
No, it wasn't the planning board, was it? It went to the
Zoning board,
ZBA.
zoning board of
So
appeals.
once it comes out of the planning board, it's
ZBA.
like, I don't
Right.
ever recall anything coming back to the planning board from the ARB.
Right.
In fact, this one process where you certify that the reuse of the historic building
Isn't it?
doesn't damage its historic integrity, that would be the sole thing that would cause it to
Actually,
Right,
Mark, on
to
a
go
couple,
back.
on a couple of instances, before you were
Yeah.
our liaison, and maybe during, there were some cases, for instance, what's currently the yogurt place. We had a lot of back and forth with that.
Oh, yeah, the railroad station
You know,
had a
that
problem
we
in
had
the
a lot
actual
of-
code.
We had a lot of that
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
And so they did come before us a couple of times by request from us.
Well,
And
that's-
it's just, hold on for a second, and then there were a couple of other, properties, larger properties that had that situation, but in those cases, the applicant asked to come and in front of the board. So it would make maybe make their planning board process a little bit easier.
I think that's a great thing there for someone
But
to do.
it's a request by the,
Yeah.
by the applicant.
Well, this is what happened. McAllen Burgos was the, covering the pool, the indoor pool. It was recently, it was maybe 2 or 3 meetings ago. Based on comments that we made, it kind of triggered them for a couple of other ideas, and something came up that one of the architects here brought up that didn't make any sense. So they started their wheels going, and they actually decided to change things, so it did go back to the planning board, but because of the changes that they were making. So, once again, this is further, harder for actually having this done simultaneously.
And that's all for the board of trustees to decide. Really, who's,
Right, I
So it
mean,
is.
well, it's because it's code, so yeah, it has
all
to be,
code.
but the thing is to get the various boards to agree the process that they're comfortable with, and then, frankly, there's nothing set in stone, for all eternity. It can be changed as times change and as people's reflect and look at the process, so.
Think of how much it would benefit the applicants too, to get through the process much quicker.
uh,
There's no, I mean,
And-
even
and
the
let's face
architects
it,
that
we've
work
been
in this town that I'm friendly with, that are here every night, like tonight, they all completely support that approach too. They realize that it's just, the process is just unnecessarily stretched out through, I mean, wouldn't it be great? The planning board sometimes takes longer. What if you get the ARB, you get it knocked out of the way in the first couple of weeks, you're done, you feel more confident, the planning board, to move forward, you don't have to feel like you have this other obstacle in
Well, I
front
mean,
of you.
the argument about stretching out is why actually the ARB meets twice a month, is to minimize the delays from planning board approval too.
And frankly, we've been talking about, for at least 8 to 10 years that I know of, streamlining the process.
Yeah,
The
sure.
buildings department process. And this seems like, the most logical way to start, that's for sure.
I would suggest that it makes a lot of sense for someone to sit down with Pat and chat with him for a while to see how, because if it doesn't make sense to the planning board chair, then we got a problem with trying to address the issue. But if it makes sense, and both boards are saying it makes sense, then it's just a matter of figuring out how to put it into language, the process into language.
Mhm.
And I think, Rick, you're absolutely correct. I mean, the whole idea of trying to speed things up where appropriate, right, is really important.
It's been tried before. Give it a shot
Tried
again.
before.
Give it a shot again.
I'll reach out to Pat.
It's,
Would you?
it's,
I
Yeah.
think it's worthwhile
I'll reach out to Pat.
seeing.
But what were the obstacles before? to
I
this
don't
happening?
really know. I don't really know because,
Okay. That it was,
Stepping on toes.
yeah, there's a lot of toes being stepped on. And
Through
that,
planning board?
Yep.
But isn't everybody working towards the same common goal, not an
You
ego?
think so?
but it's a new planning board in a lot of
it's a
respects.
new plan, yeah, it's a.
I mean, there's some of the old gang, but there's a new chair, and there's at least one new member, maybe 2 new members from the last time that this was tried, right?
Yeah.
And the
I'll
bottom,
tell you- I don't want to be taped. I'll tell you why.
The mics are still on.
There was a reason. It was a different planning board, and some of the people have since retired.
Well, I will also copy
It was.
Brian and the Board of Trustees in my attempt to sit down with Pat and have a conversation. I won't myself and Pat just sit down. I think, you know.
Whatever you could do to get some motion.
But I want the Board of Trustees to be aware of it at the same time, only because I don't want anybody to think anybody's going behind anybody's back.
And, you know, it makes a lot of sense, because there's times in the planning board process, because I know you do too. I sit through a lot of the planning board meetings, the majority of them, and there's times in the process, it's just like the discussions are, why is this being I mean, I understand that everyone now knows there's this fence here, but, and figurative fence, not a literal fence, but, you know, even that's kind of weird, because it's like, they start talking about, and every once in a while literally a fence comes to you where it's been determined by planning board that it has to be a chain link, that black chain link fence at so much height, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, but don't we normally, we being ARB, review fencing? Well, there's a case where no, for some specific reason. So there's a lot of weird,
Yeah,
also-
you know,
there's also-
Andy and I tried for,
forth on that.
Andy and I tried for lots and lots of, like, for years.
well, let's
For
try
years.
again, it makes
There's
sense.
also,
Years.
I mean,
So
I
after
think
a while
there's
you
also
try-
a stomach now for it,
You
only
try
because,
you try for so many years, you kind of get beaten down.
Yeah.
well, but I
you
think
know?
there's a stomach for it now, especially considering the fact that the planning board sent the people who were looking to convert the gas station to us first to have a conversation.
Yep.
So they realize that there's things that we do that's not, you know, necessarily within their purview. So there's things, you know, that obviously, they thought there were things that we should talk about before they get it, so.
I don't think that's happening.
Well, but that's just an
Yeah,
example.
I know, I'm just saying.
It's not
you
the
know,
only, it's
I
not the
know,
only
I-
time they've sent
Yeah, I
somebody
think, you
to
know,
us.
I think that project is kind of stalled.
You know, I had a dream in which that was actually done. Just the last few nights.
So how was the deli?
I don't remember what it is, it was just the building form was larger.
Yeah, they're open for repair, they're open for
There's a big
repairs.
sign up
That
at the
they're
gas
open for
station now. I
repairs.
just noticed it today, that
Yeah,
they're
they're-
open again for repairs and Lamb Rose.
Maybe they abandoned that.
I heard that they had abandoned it, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what they didn't, that's some of their answers.
Just so you know,
On one
before I forget, the issue of,
129?
no, yeah,
Yeah,
129.
129.
Well, in speaking with Ed today to go over the slate of issues here, he did say that they were taking 129 off the agenda because there are several issues that have to come before you before they come before us. And there's you know, handicap ramps, there's stairways, there's all kinds of things that are going to come onto village property. And he wanted you guys, meaning the Board of Trustees, to approve them as a
I
whole.
looked at that at Google Map, I couldn't figure out where village property was vis-à-vis what they're talking
Yeah.
about.
Right.
Are they talking about on village easement for the roadway? or-
No, I think it's more for the stairways and the
I know, but where's the village property around that? That's what I can't figure out.
sidewalks. Well, certainly the
Yeah,
sidewalks.
Well, that's why I said easement.
Well, yeah.
so-
Yeah, there's no sidewalk on that side at all.
Well, there's,
There's no sidewalk.
no, but,
There's
I know, but
sidewalk on that side.
that's what they're looking to make.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
of the ramp, the handicap ramp going into the.
So they got to see, and that's going to be
And that
complicated. Is that-
handicap ramp going into the offices is, you know
There's
what?
also, there's also other issues. I mean, they're showing on the proposed drawings, brick on the back and the west, the north and the west side, whereas right now they're block walls. And, you know, they have to replace the fire escape, so there's a lot that has to be done, and I don't know whether or not the fire escape or whatever, you know, what other issues are, but according to Ed, there's quite a few issues that have to be.
Those would be building department issues,
Yeah.
the fire escape and stuff, right?
Well, I don't know, they must be easement issues, because he says it's gotta come before you before they go before anybody else.
They want a ramp because of the business that they want to put in the front.
Well, there's 3 offices in there, so,
I know.
and that one ramp would
But-
serve all 3.
No, they,
All right, well,
the
let's
office,
see.
no, the ramp isn't serving the offices. The ramp is going to try to service the Main Street, storefront, which is going to change, it's going to be a storefront instead of accountants.
Well, the way the ramp goes
I
into
know.
the side of the building, there's door and door.
I
This
know.
door goes into the, but it's moving ahead.
Yeah.
I'd love to see what's going on, that's, you know,
Well, that's where we are.
So, Ken, to answer the one question that you didn't ask, or maybe it was, it turned out that DiNardo agreed to allow representatives from the Historical Society and other representatives from the village to go through the,
Go through the house.
and select features to be pulled out
Yeah.
and stored for later use by the village.
Yeah, Joe says anyone go in there and take, for him, but like, he doesn't, they're gonna
This is the,
bulldozer.
The main, the mansion
on
itself.
30.
Yeah,
So
Did they bring in architectural salvage? Did they get the,
I was suggesting architectural salvage, but what it came down to was, it's basically, the village is gonna select things and Joe's folks are gonna pull them out and it's gonna be stored somewhere until such time.
would do it for you? Does all the time.
Well,
there's like, you can alter that house, there's like, the cool thing about that house might be the doors and some of the windows, but like some houses,
The
Well, some of the
fireplaces,
woodwork.
they're kind
The
of,
mantelpiece.
they're mantled, some of them are like fake.
yeah, but there's a lot that isn't, so that's what people wanna get. And so, I don't know what if you want, check with Ed, check with Larry to find out, because I don't know,
I'll do that.
I thought that someone like Pat Ryan from the Historical Society, and then I don't know who else was gonna do,
After
she did.
Earl, Connie.
And Connie, okay, so that walkthrough's been done then, huh?
Yeah, it's been done. I think Neil Marwood gone.
Yeah, Joe's pretty open to anything that anybody wants in that place.
And Earl was part of
You
it
know.
too.
And so they picked out everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal.
That's fine. Before we leave, I just want to formally approve the minutes of the January 25th meeting. Ken has made one change, and,
As amended, I'll make that change.
yeah, changing the 1/1 to 2/1. The second paragraph on the second page.
Did you feel what they want to put in 129? What business? Anybody here with businesses?
Okay, so motion to approve is amended?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yep, I'll drop it off tomorrow.
Sorry.
Thanks, Rick. Thank you.